Hey everybody, Joe Brady here. Thank you for joining me. I've got an interesting image edit for you today. We're going to take a rather bland raw file of Gayhead light on Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and we're going to turn it into a real portrait of the place. We're going to do that by changing the light, changing the color, and we're going to put in a new sky that was captured nearby to really fill out sort of a portrait of the place. This is not just about taking a picture. This is about making a photograph that tells the story. So let's get started. So here we are with a somewhat slightly underexposed photograph of Gayhead light in Aquina, Massachusetts. This is on Martha's Vineyard. And yes, it's a little underexposed. I was protecting the highlights, but we're pretty close to the edge, but the shadows are kind of dark. We had somebody walk into it who just happened to be one of the guys on our photo workshop, so he is forgiven. So this is going to need some Photoshop help. We've got a couple of things going on. The lighthouse seems slightly skewed. It could just be my eyes, but it seems to be a little leaning to the left on the top, although the rest of it seems straight. In fact, let's check that first. Let's go to the crop tool up here and click on the corner down here and see what happens. So as we click on that corner, we rotate around. I'm just looking up in the lighthouse tower itself, up on the top, and making sure that some of the glass panes are straight up and down against those lines. I came up with a little rotation. You can see up in the rotation it's 0.32 degrees, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough to throw you off. So let's fix our basics here and the basic panel. Let's go ahead and open up the shadows. We're going to open them up a lot. And the highlights are probably fine. Let's bring the highlights down a little bit. And I think that's all we need to do with the tone. Color temperature might be off, but let's go ahead and adjust the texture and the presence and then add some vibrance. And since this has got a lot of yellows in it, not a lot of blue, yellow and red, let's increase the saturation, and that's looking a lot better. Now the foreground color is kind of competing with the lighthouse a little bit. So we're going to want to bring up the color of the lighthouse a little bit more or bring this down. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. Let's get a graduated filter and just kind of deal with the bottom half of the image. It's okay that it's coming up a little on the lighthouse because we're going to deal with that directly. Let's go ahead and open up the exposure on the foreground, but then let's turn down the saturation just of there. And let's add a little more clarity and contrast to it. And color temperature seems off a little bit too. I'm not sure which way. Let's see what happens if we add some blue. Oh, I kind of like that. If we add yellow, no, it's competing with the lighthouse. So I think it needs a little bit of blue. And that adding that little bit of blue will take away some of the yellow and make it a little less intense. I think we could probably bring our saturation back now. Nope, let's leave it a little bit desaturated because we want the eyes to go to the tower, and that needs to be a little more saturated. So let's get another brush. Let's turn on auto mask down the bottom here, and underneath let's click on show the mask overlay. So let's get a nice big mask here, or a nice big brush here, and let's just paint inside the lighthouse. And it's okay if we get some other stuff like the railings. It's not going to be affected by what we're about to do. Alright, so O to toggle off our mask. Let's go ahead and add some saturation to that. Well, in fact, we'll add a lot because for some reason the red bricks in the lighthouse have lost some of their brightness in this image, and that's kind of more, it was even a little, maybe a little deeper than that. So let's add a little bit of magenta and a little bit of yellow, which will give us that kind of deep red, brick red, orangey that the lighthouse really was. And then on top of that, let's bring up the exposure a little bit and maybe a little contrast too. And that's looking a heck of a lot better. Now we do have our guy over on the edge. He might get cropped out anyway, but we're going to get rid of him in Photoshop. We don't need quite as much foreground, but what's the weak part here is we don't have any clouds in the sky. And fortunately, later in the week, or later in the day even, we came across some great clouds. In fact, take a look here. It's one of the shots on the beaches. So we did have gray clouds, so we're going to put these two together. So what I'm going to do is select our lighthouse. I'm going to hold down Command or Control and click our clouds at the same time. And then we're going to go up to Photo edit in, not Photoshop, but choose open as layers in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop. Both of our images are just on layers in the same channel. Hide our lighthouse. There's our sky underneath, a bigger file. So we need to put this sky in this lighthouse. But before we start, we need to do a couple of little edits on our lighthouse shots. Let's hide the ocean for a bit. And we have one of our photographers, actually from our workshop, just on the edge of the frame. And unfortunately, he has to go. So let's use the lasso tool. And I'm just going to draw around him. And let's see how good Photoshop does at getting rid of a person on the edge of the frame. I'm going to cut to the chase and use Shift F5, which is the keyboard shortcut to get us right to fill. Bypasses all the extra menus we don't need. And not too bad a job. The grass is a little weird. So I'm going to take a piece from over here. I'm going to get the stamp tool or the cloning brush, which is just the S key, and hold down Alt. And I'm going to pick from right in here. And then bring that, I would say about right here. I want to work at 100%. And I'm just going to add that in. In fact, we'll just do that. And that looks good. Sky's a little different, so I'm going to have to use S again. Make it a little smaller. I'm going to sample the sky here and kind of bring that in as well. In fact, I'm going to make it a little smaller. I'm going to get rid of these little pop-up things, whatever they are, just because they're a bit of a distraction. Okay, that looks better. So as we back off, is there anything else we need to change? Actually, from we look at a distance, the sky color's got a change in it. So let's get our S key again. I'm going to back off to 70%. And I'm going to pick up sky from here and just paint over top of that. There we go, that's gone. Okay. So now we have our photographer gone. We need to select the sky. So let's get the magic wand tool, which is W. And I have the sample size set for 5x5. That's good. Tolerance is set for 25. That's fine. Anti-alias, yes. Contiguous, no, because I want it to be able to select behind or through the glass panes in the top of the tower. So let's click on the sky. And it picks up most of it. Some of the sky was beyond the range we set, so we simply hold down the Shift key, and that turns our magic wand into a plus. And then we can add in, and you can see it did a nice job of getting down in between the leaves. Also picked up a couple of things we don't need. For example, there's a little reflection here. It picked up a little bit on this building. So let's get the lasso tool. Right above it, that's the L key. Hold down the Alt, and notice it adds a minus to it. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of this thing it picked up on the little building there. That's good. So now we're going to save this, and let's call it sky. So that saves that selection. So we can just deselect it, and let's go get our sky. So I'm going to hide the lighthouse and bring the ocean back with our sky. And let's click on the ocean layer, hit Command or Control A, which to select all, and then Command or Control C to copy it. Now it is sitting on the clipboard. And actually, we're going to be done with this. So now we can load in our sky. So I'm going to hit Commands. Actually, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to hit the zoom key and just zoom out a little bit. And we're going to load in our sky. So let's click on Channel, and there is sky. Hit OK. And remember, our sky, our new sky, is sitting on the clipboard. So we can go to Edit Paste Special. But watch, there's something wrong. We go to Paste Special, and Paste Into is missing. The reason for that is we're on the wrong layer. If you see here, that layer is hidden. We need to click on our lighthouse layer and then go to Edit Paste Special, and Paste Into is what we want. And that will put our new sky in. So now that's cool, but let's hit Command T, which is transform, and we can move this around just by clicking and dragging. And I think I kind of like this kind of rooster tail looking cloud. I kind of like the idea of it actually coming right through the glass behind the lighthouse. That looks kind of cool. I think something about like that is good. So then I'm going to hit enter. Now we have all this extra transparent stuff we don't need anymore, so let's get rid of that. I'm just going to click on our lighthouse layer. I'm going to click on the little icon, Command click on there, and what that does is it selects it. Why do I want to do that? Well, I can just go up to Image and click on Crop. Could I have gone to the Crop tool and cropped it? Yes, this just happens to be faster. So Command D to deselect. So what's the problem? Well, the sky color is all wrong. It just doesn't fit in with the scene. So let's kind of zoom in this area about here. And the problem we have is, as I mentioned, the sky color is off. So we're going to add a color adjustment layer. So we click down here on our little half white circle and we click on color balance. And let's bring this over so we can see what's going on a little better. We start with the midtones, and as we drag this slider, no, that's wrong. Ooh, adding red makes the sky look a better blue. So I think we want to go over it so that we don't start adding red into the clouds like here. But something about like that, it actually needed quite a bit of red in that blue. Magenta green. Green, definitely not. Maybe a little bit of magenta, just a couple of points. And then yellow, blue. Yellow, blue. No, adding blue is a bad thing. It needs a little bit of yellow. So let's do the same thing to highlights. Red, cyan. Red, cyan, red, cyan. You know, when neither of them do anything really to benefit the image, that means leave it alone. Magenta green. Actually, it does need a little magenta. And then yellow, blue. Oh, needs some more yellow in the highlights too. Now let's go to shadows. Do the same thing. Cyan, red. Still needs a little red in the shadows. Magenta green, magenta green. Interesting, it needs a little green, just a little bit. And yellow, blue, yellow, blue. Needs a little yellow again. All right, so that completely changed the look of the sky. Look at the color change in the sky. But let's hit Command 0 to back off. And unfortunately what it did was it kind of ruined all the color down below. So how do we fix that? Because you can see how it's changed. It's added all that color. I kind of like what it did to the lighthouse. I like how it added a little warmth, but I don't like what it did down here. So we're going to borrow the mask from our sky layer, which is right below. So click on the mask right here, hold down the Alt key, and then drag it up to our color balance. And now you can see it's only affecting the sky as I turn this on and off. However, as I said, I kind of liked the color adjustment that it did to the lighthouse tower itself. So let's click on the mask, Alt click on the mask, and yeah, you can see there's our lighthouse. Well, let's get a brush, B. We're going to hit X to put white in the foreground. We're going to set it to 100%, way up here. So we want 100% on our flow and our opacity. Let's get a bigger brush, and we're just going to paint out the mask part of our lighthouse. Now, it doesn't matter if we get a little bit off. In fact, let's change the hardness of the brush. We'll let it fade in a little bit down to the grass. Because remember, this is just for the color balance layer. So now as we click back on the icon, now the lighthouse is getting that color change too, and that little bit of warmth looks superb. That looks really good. What do I want to change? Really nothing. It looks good. In fact, we can just save this. In fact, we can get rid of our sky layer. We're done with that just to save some room. And now let's just hit save, Command S, and that will send our edit back into Lightroom. So what do we want to do to finish this off? Let's go to full screen. And that looks great. I love how we kind of have the rooster tail cloud going right through the windows in the lighthouse. Everything looks good. Oh, we forgot something. We forgot something big. Oh no, we got to go back. Notice, look at our grass right here. I forgot to do something. Oh dear, let's get out of full screen. Let's go back to Photoshop. I forgot something important. And that's the sky is coming down all the way to the horizon without any fade. And clouds fade as they get to the horizon. And I forgot to do that. So let's Alt click on our sky mask, which is right here. And let's hit the G key. And I want black in the foreground, not white. So let's switch black and white here. And if you haven't used this, under basics, the second one in is black or foreground to transparent. And I want the sky to fade into the old color sky. So I'm going to start about right here and come up almost to the railing and put black in there. Then click on our sky. And now notice that the new sky is fading into the old sky. And since we have these sort of out of focus grasses that were blowing in the wind, plus they're very close to my position, now they fit in because we get to see all of them and they're not getting cut off at all. Whew, that was, almost missed that one. That's an important point when you're putting in a new sky, to make sure that you fade it into the horizon, because the sky is not going to be full power at the horizon. It always has that fade. All right, so that's been done. Let's tab back over to Lightroom now that we've saved it. And okay, now we'd put it back to our original before we did our edit with our vignette and our crop, because it wrote over top of it. We'll bring up our crop. We'll go ahead and do that where we were before, a little off the bottom, a little off the top, slight bit in off the left, a little bit more in off the right, something about like that. And let's hit enter, see if that looks good. Yes, that looks good. And we'll do our vignette again, bring it all the way in, bring the midpoint in, make it a little less round, feather it a bit more, and then back to 14 or so, like I said. Okay, so we look at our vignette again. Good, now let's look at it full screen. And actually, once again, I want a little more on the bottom. Let's just add a little bit more of that pedestal base. Full screen, yes, that looks better. Okay, so now you can see we've got our faded, slightly out of focus grass blowing in the wind very close to us. But that's actually a help in this case, because it actually, the blurry part actually makes you look beyond, back to our lighthouse. You know, I thought I was done with this image, but then I saw two more things that I really wanted to do. So I did go back into Photoshop. And one thing that I realized was bothering me was this lens up here is red on one side and white on the other. And I really should have waited for it to spin around for the white light to show. And it was bothering me. So there's a way to fix that. So I'm going to take, you can see I have some extra layers here. I'm going to highlight the 3 layers and come up to the layer menu. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and choose Merge Visible. The reason for holding down the Alt key is it gives me all of my layers still intact. Because what I want to do is come up to Filter, Render, Lens Flare. And what lens flare is basically a sharp light. And you can see there are these flares, and there are different types depending which would be the most appropriate. And I think the 105 prime would be, and also much less. I'm thinking 30% or so. Let's bring that. And I'm going to position that right over top. Yeah, don't you wish it was a little bigger so you could really see where you're placing the thing? I'm going to put it right over top of where I think the light is. Let's hit OK and let it do its thing. And look, I missed a little bit. So let's do it again. Filter, Render, Lens Flare. I really wish they would let us see this a little better. I got to move it over just a little to the right. And there we go. I lucked out right over top. So now that looks a lot better. All right, so lastly for this image, here it is. I brought it back into Lightroom. We've got our flare. I put a graduated filter in right here. If I hit the O key, you can see I painted out, or I masked out the lighthouse itself so that I could add a little bit of dehaze, a little bit of structure, and then, or clarity rather, and then I went into HSL, use saturation luminance, and I just brought down the blue saturation luminance down, and I brought the hue up just a little bit to get this final, I promise, of this lighthouse. And as we look at it full screen, I just think that having the lens flare over the light adds another little bit of interest to the lighthouse, and it really draws your eye up to the top. Think of the light of the lighthouse kind of being the eyes of the portrait. So that's it, I promise. And if you compare what we started with, there's our raw file that we started with, and here's the image we ended up with, which turns out to be a really nice image of Gay Head Light in Aquina, Massachusetts, which is on Martha's Vineyard. That was involved, but it was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you online again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. So that was a fun edit. We took an otherwise bland raw file and really created a nice portrait of the place of this lighthouse on Cape Cod. Got a little bit involved with Photoshop, but those are important tools you need to know how to use when you really want to transform your images into a portrait of the place. So that's it for today. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you online again soon. Bye-bye.